welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups, technology and entrepreneurship. I'm Chandra Shrikant coming to you live from India's startup capital, Bengaluru. And this is a show where we don't just discuss funding, where we don't just glorify entrepreneurs, but also ask those tough questions when it's required. And it's certainly required today because business competition, business rivalry has touched a new low in the cab aggregation space in India. So much so that it seems to have trumped basic decency. It seems to have come at the cost of a woman's privacy and safety. We're talking about the big story that broke on Recode on Uber, where Uber has fired its head of Asia Pacific, Eric Alexander, after it was found that he had accessed medical records of a woman who was raped by an Uber driver in India way back in December 2014. He had carried this record with him for a long time, and he also shared its findings with Uber CEO Travis Kalanick, who counts Eric Alexander as a close confidant. Now, apart from this, what's interesting is Uber executives apparently believed at that time that its Indian rival Ola had a key role to play as far as this entire rape episode is concerned, that perhaps it was a conspiracy by Ola to trump Uber, to sabotage Uber's business in India. So this is really a multi-pronged battle because Ola has now hit back. It's called Uber despicable. It's questioned its morals, and it's said that this is ultimately a reflection of Uber's character. Now remember, this is coming at a time where things are already at a low as far as Uber is concerned. It's in the middle of a broad investigation over sexual harassment, over mismanagement, and in recent weeks it's fired as much as 20 people as part of this probe. Uber is not confirming if Eric Alexander has been fired as part of that. The only thing that they have confirmed is that he is no longer with the company. Remember, he was instrumental in getting the operations going as far as Uber India is concerned. So the key question that we're really asking today, this evening, is has business competition, has business rivalry trumped decency as far as the Indian internet ecosystem is concerned, Indian startup ecosystem is concerned? Does winning at all cost is this ultimately paying the price and compromising women's safety and privacy in India? To get those answers, we are joined by three special guests on the show. We have Ravi Gururaj, who's the president of TAI Bengaluru, Trisha Shetty, a lawyer based, who's joining us from Mumbai. We also have Harminder Sani from Wazir Advisors, who tracks the internet space very closely. I'm going to begin with you, Ravi Gururaj, because TAI has been an enabler when it comes to some of these startups, when it comes to some of these unicorns. What do you really make of this entire episode? Yes, there's a lot of drama. I mean, fact is stranger than fiction as far as this entire episode is concerned. But what does it say about the internet ecosystem, about the larger startup ecosystem?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, business rivalry is very a different kind of realm than public safety. Public safety, and especially in a very serious crime situation, should be left to the police. I don't think either of the startups or any startup is qualified to investigate, to be, conducting any research on those issues, right? That should be completely left to the police and the law, right? So I'd say healthy business rivalry is healthy, but what we're hearing here doesn't seem very healthy, and it's unfortunate. I don't have all the details. I don't think everything that's out in the public is necessarily all the facts, and I think we should allow the two companies to comment on this themselves. And I think it's not the kind of scenario we want to see for what is on one hand the largest startup in the world, and on the other hand one of the largest startups and a role model here in India as well, right? In the e-commerce and the taxi space.
Right. Trisha, let me bring you in on this. You're the founder of She Says, a platform that, fights for women's rights. On the technical side, was Uber even allowed to access these records? I mean, I know it's possible if you push the right buttons to get any kind of document you want, but was it right of them to even be in possession of these medical records? Would their justification have been that, look, the crime was committed in an Uber car, therefore we had to look into it? I mean, what do you make of it in terms of the technicalities here? Should Uber have had access in the normal course of things to those medical reports?
I will address the technicality question in a minute, but what I do want to first address is this is a case of a woman being raped. And to politicize this, for one company to say, oh, this is a political attack by another company, it's a woman who was raped. There is no justifiable reason for this to become a spat between rival companies. Coming back to the technical aspect of it, Section 164A of the CRPC clearly dictates how a medical examination of a rape survivor should be undertaken, what is the steps that need to be undertaken, and what it says there is once the report is done by the hospital in charge, which is then forwarded to the FSL Kalina in Mumbai or the processing place to test whether the DNA matches or not, that report has to be directly forwarded to the magistrate. No one is allowed access to that. The survivor is not allowed access to the report. The accused is not allowed access to the report. The press is not allowed access to the report. That report gets directly forwarded to the magistrate. Also, Section 228 of the IPC clearly prohibits anyone from disclosing any information on paper or any form on any forms of communication that in any way can disclose the identity of a rape survivor. So we have very strict laws in place that protect the identity of a rape survivor, and also the medical report in question is evidence in a case. It cannot be distributed. People cannot have access to it. So I think here the question of concern obviously is, how was this man roaming around with a medical report of a rape survivor, not just distributing it and showing it as alleged to the CEO, Mr. Travis, and others, and more than that, how did he get access to those reports? I think at this point our law bodies need to look at the police in charge, the lab that was processing her rape kits, to understand how did this report get in the hands of the accused's company that he belongs to in the first place. There are so many violations here, and this is so troublesome, especially given in a country like India where you see constantly women's safety being questioned. And then where's the assurance? A survivor comes forward, trusts the system, only to be betrayed by the system like this. This is completely not okay.
Right. Harminder, you heard out Ravi Gururaj, you heard out Trisha Shetty, who clearly says that, technically, legally, he should not have had access to that report. Bad enough, he accessed it, but he took it all the way to San Francisco to discuss the findings with the CEO to see if, this was a business conspiracy by a rival. And if, it almost seemed like they were more bothered by Ola than the victim herself. What do you make of this constant fight that we've seen between Uber and Ola for dominance? Is this a new low? Where is this going?
See, my view on this is that I read somewhere, and all of us know this, that with great success comes great responsibility. But in this case, it's becoming like with great success, what comes is paranoia. People are getting paranoid about how successful they are, and they're becoming slaves of their success and fear of failure. And this is unbelievable, the kind of accusations which are flying around, and what is true, what is not true. But just the basis of this, that something like this was done, assuming that some rival did it to us, right? I think it's being paranoid, and basis that paranoid, whatever actions have been taken, I think they need to be discounted with that part. But absolutely unacceptable. Business rivalry, as it said in the program earlier, also it's a different realm. Every business has a rival. Every business responds to a rival, but there is some sensibility in that. There's something beyond market shares. There's something beyond market cap. And for such successful companies who have achieved so much already, I think they should have been far more responsible in whatever has been done. These questions about how they get the report, how did it land up in their hands, we all know that, whether anywhere in the world, that if you really, really are bent upon it and you are such a successful, rich company and you want to get access, you will. But why are you doing this, right? For believing that a rival is trying to beat us and we won't let it happen and trying to... This is completely, I would say, beyond imagination that how people have behaved. But only reason I could say they are so paranoid about that. We are the largest, we are the best, we are the biggest, we are the most highest market cap, and for at any cost, we would not like to lose it. Let's forget about everything else. Otherwise, there could not be any reason for a professional or a promoter to do anything like this. So it's the,
Right.
I would say the paranoid.
I want to bring in Ravi Gururaj. Right, Harminder, I get your point. Ravi, that's an important point. You know, with great success comes great responsibility, but in this case, it's also led to great paranoia, which seems to be dictating some of the actions. And, you know, the messages are so mixed for entrepreneurs today. On the one hand, you constantly have people saying, you know, go out there, do jugaad, do whatever it takes. You know, you must be paranoid about winning. You must be aggressive. And then, you know, the fallout of all that is that someone ends up crossing a line and it just makes everything look bad. So where do entrepreneurs draw the line, and who's really going to mentor them? Because, you know, the examples of success here, Uber is a big example of that unicorn success. It sort of let down these entrepreneurs very badly at one level. So what messages should these entrepreneurs be taking?
Yeah, before I comment on that, Chandra, first we should be clear that, you know, there's no credible allegation that Ola was involved here at all. And I feel it's really unfortunate that they've been dragged into this. You know, there's nothing I've seen that says in any way that any credible thing has been put out that points any fingers at them, right? I think this is just mere allegations that have been surfaced in some report, some internal communications at Uber, right? So that's first. I think, you know, I don't think anything at Ola is at this point objectionable in my mind, at least from what I've seen, okay? I think, you know, in terms of mentoring large startups, these are large corporations now. They operate in hundreds of cities, they operate in dozens of countries, you know, they have staffs that number in the thousands. I think the bar has to be set very high. I think we should hold them responsible for their actions, just as we would any other corporation, any other entity. I don't think there's any lower bar. In fact, you know, to the point you said, they are also role models for young folks who aspire to build companies in the future. And so maybe we should even be tougher and expect even better behavior from them. So I don't, you know, I think, you know, if they've done something that's illegal outside of the law, then, you know, we should throw the book at them. You know, and they should have an opportunity to prove, you know, or disprove the facts as it may be, you know, and move on. I think, you know, we should not in any way compromise on, you know, setting the bar high as we would with any organization. I think this is a very serious matter. As, you know, the previous panelists have already highlighted, there's no room for any kind of wiggle room here at all. I think, you know, the police should assert you know, the rights of the victim 100%. If it's privacy rights, if it's the right to, you know, any kind of recourse under liability law, whatever, I think, you know, we should pursue, I should expect that to be pursued to the fullest.
Right. Trisha, you heard out both those views. Now, the problem is, you know, once the government cracks down on misdemeanors, I mean, I remember after the rape incident happened in 2014, there was a blanket ban on cab aggregators. So, you know, it's always the extreme reaction. Now, I don't know what they can do after learning that Uber has somehow accessed this medical report, but is there a middle ground that's possible here as far as regulations are concerned? And are cab aggregators doing enough in terms of background checks? Because complaints of harassment, molestation, they are not, you know, isolated as far as Uber's concerned. Let's be realistic. Ola has also had its fair share of complaints in that department. So are these cab aggregators really taking safety seriously, or, you know, is it scale at any cost? As long as they're able to add cabs, add drivers, safety is somehow secondary.
Look, I want to address one very important point here, that again, coming back to this is a case of rape, what Uber here did by saying, oh, there's a conspiracy, this may be Ola's fault, we all know that this is passing the buck. This is refusing to take acknowledgement, this is refusing to take responsibility and acknowledgement that they did not do enough screening, that driver hired by them went ahead and raped a customer. So even, if you don't pinpoint the exact issue, and if you indulge in all of the, the hogwash, the blame game, you don't address the true issue of women's safety. Coming back to what you said, of course, I do understand there's a huge demand. It's impossible, maybe beyond a point, to really figure out how we can ensure women's safety. But there are measures that we can take. Ensure that we have a sex offenders registry. Our government needs to take more responsibility. If we had a sex offenders registry that these cab aggregate companies could have access to, then perhaps before employing a person, they could ensure that the person is not a sexual offender or does not have any history of sexually offending a woman. Having said that, the cab companies should also need to take more responsibility. If there is a case of sexual assault that comes under their domain, instead of indulging in conspiracy theories and saying this is a rival company that's trying to malign our names, truly take a step back and say, okay, where did we go wrong? What more can we do to ensure women are safe? Coming back to this case at hand, we also need to look at the police in charge, at the hospitals that leak the medical reports, and hold them accountable. There needs to be judicial action taken against these bodies, so that we can ensure that should people do this, we don't just get away with saying, look, this is a big company, they have all the money and clout in the world. In a country like India, they can get access to medical reports. This is a huge offense. This is a huge violation of the victim's right to privacy. There needs to be accountability at all levels, and at this point we need to stop. That guy has been fired, fine. What about our system? Where did our system let this girl down? We all need to introspect and ask hard-hitting questions, otherwise women will never be safe in our country.
Right. Ravi, one more point that I want to really ask you is, as the head of TIE Bangalore, an organization that nurtures entrepreneurship, will you be doing something at the institutional level to ensure that, entrepreneurs take more responsibility, they are more answerable? Because the only thing that they are asked all the time, and I know we are partly to blame for this, is, how much are you raising? What's your funding? What's your valuation? So the incentive to really build a culture, build diversity, that's really missing in these startups, and even VCs operate on a 5 to 7 year horizon. So how are we going to inculcate some of these long-term goals as far as startups are concerned?
Yeah, so I think, basically we would want to see obviously a level playing field. We would want to make sure that the competitive dynamic doesn't turn ugly, that people don't do things that are unethical. I think that would be obviously idealistic goal. But reality is that the startup ecosystem reflects what the environment, the community, the society at large reflects as well, right? And so, what we have to do is we have to be able to point out things that are wrong, be able to set up the right examples, be able to leverage the law where necessary, and be able to guide people in kind of, what are the boundaries that one shouldn't cross, right? I think there will clearly be in any business dealing disputes. There may even be issues where people have arbitration that's needed, various things, but there are reasonable ways to resolve those kinds of disputes, right? But, taking something to the next level, and especially crossing lines that, should really be in the jurisdiction of the law, the police, is kind of unacceptable, right? And I think that's where we need to be very careful that, in the heat of the moment, or in kind of getting overridden by, your competitive urge, you don't then go into from gray into kind of the black areas, right? That are kind of forbidden. I think, we need to, highlight these examples, and that's the best way to educate the community. At TIE Bangalore, we see lots of early stage entrepreneurs, and we help them. And, I think a lot of our charter members get involved in mentoring them. And, that's where the guidance comes from. I think it's from experiential learning, answering questions of young entrepreneurs when they're setting up, helping them resolve certain challenging issues that they have. And, it's a holistic approach to it, right? I don't think there's any guidebook we're going to put out, or any kind of, these are the top 10 things. I think this is life in general, right? And we need to kind of highlight these. What is the norm? What is acceptable? And what is crossing the line, right? I think we need to lay that out clearly for the community.
Right.
And, I think that happens partly
right.
from exposure of such incidents too.
Right. Harminder, a quick word from you on, where these rivals stand today, because the justification for Uber's jugaading approach in India seems to be that it's worked for them, and the stakes are very high here because they haven't been able to win China. So where do they currently stand versus Ola in India?
See, we all know the numbers that they are competing neck to neck. In some cities, one is leading, some city other is leading. And I think this is like any other business, because at any point of time, there will be one guy who will be ahead of the other guy. And that will continue to happen. Both will try different tactics to beat the other guy, get something better in terms of customer mind share or a market share, get more drivers or more cars reporting to them. It's a highly competitive market. While on one side, these kind of businesses are like asset light. They don't have any assets on their book. They don't own anything. And they're using other people. So today, if you are getting into any Uber or Ola car, earlier driver never used to wait for your call. Now they wait for your call. And when you call them, the first thing they ask is, where are you going? Tell me the destination. If they don't like the destination, they cancel it, or they wait for you to cancel it. So this is a highly competitive market in which these people have to do everything possible which comes to their, let's say, in their wisdom, what they can think of in terms of doing business. I think that's where the focus should be. Huge amount of money is riding on them. These are businesses which are fundamentally changing the way we commute, the way we move around the whole transportation industry. I think that's where the focus should be. And competition will continue to be made. So who wins, who loses, it's not the point. I think the point is that how you win or how you lose is the key which we have to focus on. If you allow me a minute, one thing which I wanted to say in terms of right, for the startups and everything, I fully agree with Ravi when he says that this life in general, the ignorance of law is not an excuse. And earlier we have seen that some of the startup guys, when they fail to make the payment, and I would say I was disappointed when the industry tried to come around them and say that let's save this guy because he's being, in a way, penalized for being a startup, and startup should not be treated like that. I think that is wrong. Every business the day they started was a startup, right? And all businesses have to be seen from the same lens, the same law, and they have to live in the same environment.
We're running out of time, so I'm just going to get...
kind of special treatment.
Harminder, I'm going to ask you to stop there because we have time for one last question. I want Ravi to counter what you've said, because Ravi, the sense that he's conveyed is there's too much of this pampering, this mollycoddling that happens when it comes to internet startups in particular. You know, the law is not laid down hard enough, harshly enough for them. What would you say to that? Does that need to change?
You know, I don't think it's pampering necessarily. I think it's nurturing in some sense, because I think, you know, in many of these cases, the laws that that these companies are operating within are having to be remolded for the new business models. So they feel like they're breaking the mold, they're, you know, pushing the envelope, right, sometimes. And that's natural, I think, as you see disruptive new business models come in, you see different ways of operating come in. I think, you know, different methodologies, and especially when you see hyper growth happen, right? I think it shocks the system in some sense, but all of that does not in any way condone activity that is, you know, unacceptable and beyond the pale, right? And that is illegal, right? I think that I think we should set aside. I think healthy competition, disruption, even having to, you know, push the law to the brink so that you kind of help push the envelope and redefine policy and, you know, what may be the current regulations for new business models is, I think, reasonable. But, you know, you shouldn't cross that line. You should work within the current frameworks to push and remold the system, right?
Right. Thanks so much, Ravi, Trisha, and Harminder. You know, differences in some things, but I think the uniform opinion in the panel is that business rivalry, business competition cannot trump basic decency, basic values that have been found seriously wanting as far as this issue is concerned. And at the end of the day, nothing can really come above a woman's safety, a woman's privacy, for that matter, any individual's privacy and safety. And I hope that this serves as a lesson for all startups and entrepreneurs. But with that, we come to the end of this edition of Startup Central. Thanks so much for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.